Welcome to Humaning. I'm ZGALA, the Art Angel, and I'm on my way to bed, as usual, having some of those deep thoughts that I wanted to share. And I was thinking about how much things have changed in my own life since the pandemic, since before the pandemic, throughout my life, in that kind of way, as one does. And really, though, yes, there are lots of layers to that, but I have been thinking a lot about how much it seemed like the world changed and my perspective changed a lot during and after the pandemic. And again, it's like when I really look at it honestly, it's been an ongoing thing my whole life and is always occurring, but my current story has it framed around that transition point to a large extent. And indeed, was a lot of changes, not just in society, but in my perception of society and society's perception of me. I think it's safe to say. It was around just shortly after that that I realized the degree of my neurodivergence. It's not that I didn't realize that before. I've always known that. I was tested a lot as a child and labeled gifted back then. Females were not labeled as autistic or ADHD, having ADHD. Yet those things run in my family, and clearly I have, a touch of the tism. To be un-PC about it, as I like to be, but also some traits of a person with ADHD much of the time. And again, I've kind of always known that to some degree, but the pandemic and how everyone else acted so much differently than me, or at least the large majority, really highlighted for me, started to really highlight how different I am in a way that was similar to how I experienced it when I was a child and in puberty, where things were really difficult for me and I felt very alone. And other people seemed to be supporting each other through those difficult times. And I seem not to be able to participate in that aspect of humanity. And I think that is like a key disabling aspect of what is called autism in our current society. But none of that is really what I wanted to talk about exactly. What I wanted to talk about is just how much my frame of reference has changed overarchingly. So that's one piece of it, but another piece of it has to do with my finances and my sense of security. My sense of security in society is tangled up in that autism piece and in my friendships or lack thereof, my relationships or lack thereof. The escalation of complex PTSD in my life that, rather than resolve itself or be more resolved as I did more and more work on myself, has become more like a rehearsed trauma in my body. So I've had to take different approaches with various degrees of success. I'm definitely feeling much better physically this year than I was last year. And I was already on the mend when I adopted a dog this year in April, Daisy May. Part of why I adopted her was I was feeling better enough to think about taking care of an animal. She turned out to be pregnant, had puppies. So now I have two dogs. One still a puppy, coming up on 6 months old, just about. And in that experience, I dewormed myself because I dewormed them. And in doing that, I realized that I have been infested with worms and various parasites probably my whole life. And in researching that, I realized probably most humans in America are, or humans in general, but for some reason here in America, we don't deworm ourselves anymore. We deworm our pets, which is how I came across, came into this cycle and realized, like, so I grew up in the country where all sorts of animals are dewormed all the time, and sometimes people are. And I remember getting worms when I was very young, living in the country, like bad enough that I knew it, which is got to be pretty bad actually, because they're fairly hard to detect. And when I look back at my life, now that I've gotten rid of some of the symptoms recently that I had been struggling with off and on for quite, like definitely way worse in the last couple years, but I can look back over more than a decade and see some profound digestive issues, maybe all the way back to my childhood, like I've said, and see that these probably parasites have been with me probably to various degrees, and probably I've picked up new ones along the way, and as I've aged and become more worn out, and for a long chunk of time there, didn't take very good care of myself and drank a lot of alcohol. Yeah, it's a wonder I'm alive at all, y'all. That's what I'm trying to get at. And if a lot of that sounds unrelatable, that's kind of what I wanted, what I'm getting at, what I was really thinking about is how much we don't relate to something until we do, and maybe you'll never relate to some of the stuff in my life, and lucky you, there's not a whole lot that I can't relate to, even some of the worst things in this life, and that's largely because I've had a whole lot of experiences, and not all of them have been pleasant, although a lot of them have been. But I can understand how people get to certain places that maybe a lot of people can't understand how people get to, out of poverty, out of addiction, out of desperation, out of perhaps worm infestation, now I'm realizing. And I think these things are more common than most of us like to think. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about my deworming journey, which I am only probably about halfway through in this major version of it. And then I plan on deworming myself regularly along with my pets from here on out, which I used to do at least moderately with herbs. But I am doing an herbal detox. I'm going to be doing a pharmaceutical detox as well, on top of the mild pharmaceutical detox I already did do with my dogs. Anyway, humaning is hard sometimes. Being a worm is probably hard sometimes too. I got a lot of thoughts about consciousness, collective consciousness of parasites, of you and I, of the earth, of my dogs and I, my dog friends and I. I'm Bodie Ricky. Puppy friend says it's bedtime, so I'm off to bed. Thank you for being you. Thanks for letting me be me. Let me know if you have any questions. Be sure to like and subscribe. Never know what you're going to get around here, but I will be talking about more of all these things. More about all these things. Ciao for now.